Hello everybody, welcome to Code Rage 8. The new REST library is the next session being up, and hoping you have some fun with that session and the sessions before. Actually, the session before my session here was from Marco Cantu, also about the REST library. He did some kind of an introduction, and I'm going to dive a little bit more in some details of the REST library. My name is Olaf Monien. I'm the CEO of Developer Experts LLC, and well, some credits go to my colleagues Daniel Magin and Daniel Wolf. They are both working with me together, and we have been done quite some REST development in the past couple of months. All right, so let's see what we got. I'm gonna do a really short overview of the stuff we're going to talk about. I only have like 4 slides, and the main time we will spend just on code. So the first question is, what is REST? Well, REST is the new, or it's actually not that new. It's an acronym for the state-of-the-art web service, you could say. So every single major service providers such as Google, Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, just name your service, and they all have REST services, or actually web services that are REST based. You won't rarely find SOAP-based REST services anymore. SOAP services have completely been replaced by REST, you can say. SOAP services still exist. They are mainly used in internal applications, enterprise applications, whatever. But if we are talking about public available APIs and services, it's all been converted to REST services. REST means we are going to use HTTP or HTTPS as transport protocol, and every request or every single API call you have is an independent call into that API. It's all based on readable HTTP URLs. The actual difference to SOAP services is that for SOAP services, every request actually has to build its own XML-based document, some sort of an envelope, and every of those XML-based requests goes through the same single HTTP URL. So this makes a SOAP more like a monolithic system where everything goes to one single URL, whereas REST services are very flexible because you can have, for example, customers that have their own URL and, for example, orders that have their own different URL. And if you place a proxy server before or as a front-end server before your actual REST server, then this proxy server can actually do some sort of load balancing. It could look into the different URLs and verify that, for example, customers may be requested from the outside, but not their orders, and so on. Okay, so REST means we are using HTTP. We are using standards that have been used in the World Wide Web since like 20 years now. So that's what REST means. In a couple of documents and sessions of Embarcaderos, you might have heard they are using the term BaaS, or backend as a service. What does that mean? Backend as a service is something that a provider offers to you. So if you are planning to do an application for a mobile device, for example, let's say you're doing some sort of a cooking application, a recipe application where you store recipes, or where you actually share recipes between your users, then you of course have the need to store those recipes somewhere. Of course, you can set up your own backend. You can rent a server somewhere in the cloud. You can rent something from Microsoft, from their cloud services. You can rent something from Google, from Amazon, whatever. Or you can put your own server in your own data center and use that server. But backend as a service means that there are providers that offer higher level APIs, such as APIs that would allow you to store actual classes or instances of classes. So backend as a service provider would typically offer you a service that takes, for example, storage operations like, oh, I have a new recipe and I need to store the recipe and all of its properties. And of course, it would offer query support, like look up recipes for pumpkin cake, for example. This is a higher level service provider, and these providers exist. There are a couple of prominent ones. Maybe the most prominent one is Parse.com. Parse.com is actually owned by Facebook, and what Parse uses is actually what Facebook uses to store their objects. There are more, of course. There is Kinway. There are others, and the current REST library, as we see it in XE5, can of course talk to those backend as a service provider APIs. All those providers offer REST APIs, obviously. But it's something that still needs work from your side. You have to implement the actual API of that provider, like Parse or Kinway or whatever you're using. And it may take quite a bit of time to implement that. So what I actually expect from Embarcadero is that they would provide some sort of, pre-implemented providers for, or pre-implemented clients for Parse, Kinway, and so on. So they could actually take the REST client and implement all the operations that those BaaS providers provide, so that you don't have to do the dirty work. Embarcadero might do that work for you. So maybe there is something that should be discussed with them, and maybe we're seeing something there coming somewhere. I don't know. All right, this is REST, this is BaaS. Everything in the REST library that comes with XE5 is based on a component approach. So everything we got there is a component you can put on the IDE, like database components, like database connections, queries, and so on. So it's not something you have to build from scratch in source. You can still, but it's all very convenient stuff. And to see what we actually do, we will be looking at a very short introductory sample, something that Marco already has shown. But for those who missed his session, I will just do a 2-minute demo to see what we actually do here. And of course, we will be looking in one of the tools which are unfortunately not in the start menu or in the start menu group of XE5, but hidden in the binaries folder, which is the REST debugger. All right, let's get to the source code. All right, this is XE5, and just let's start off with a new project. Sorry, this is just a German version of Delphi XE5, but I don't think it's very important to have the English version here. You probably know where all the menus and buttons are, so we're just starting off with that. All right, let's start with a REST client. So this REST client is going to access a very simple REST API. So the base URL is gonna be www.developerexperts.net, and we got an Harley mobile application. So this is HD mobile API. Base URL actually means you put in the actual base where every single request will start off from. So this is this. You don't have to supply the HTTP prefix if you don't want to. You only need to prefix the protocol if you're going to use HTTPS. This API in particular is HTTP, not HTTPS here. Okay, this is it for now. Now we need to put in a request. So we put in the REST request here. So this is a component again, and it's automatically hooked up to the client already. And here we can actually put in a resource. Resource means this is the representation of something that we are going to pull from the API. In this case, we have mandators. Mandators is just a resource like customers or whatever. So mandators should bring something onto the screen already. So execute is in the context menu of the request, execute, and it just says response 200 OK. So this worked. It doesn't return any error, and you can actually look into the response with which has been technically built into the request here, which is something you get automatically, but to get a little bit more convenience, you can put in an explicit response here, REST response, hook it up to, or actually hook up the request to the response. So now we have an explicit response connected. And if we execute once more, we can go to the response here and we see the content field. So you can now see that there is something coming in. So this already works. To see something actually, we can now put in a grid, for example. We do actually a REST data set. Let me see. Let's scroll down here. Dataset adapter. That adapter is going to be connected to a response. So this is this, and you see we need a data set. So let's hook up a data set here. We can use the FD mem table, for example. Every other data set would work, even those connected to a database here. But for simplicity, we're just using a mem table from the FireDuck components here. The mem table is very similar to the client data set. It's just faster. So let's hook that guy up here. Now we need a data source. So data source, hook that guy up and go here. And now we need just a DB grid and put that somewhere where we can actually see that and hook it up to the data source. All right, just run the request once more and you see we actually get data here. So the magic is the dataset adapter that adapts the response to a dataset and automatically pulls the fields from the JSON request here, from the JSON response here. So what you see here is basically an array inside the JSON, and the adapter understands how to put that into the actual data set here. So I've not written a single line of code, and you see probably already what you can do with all those components. I will not go into code here. It's just gonna be the IDE stuff. I'm gonna save that so that you have the example. Simple demo, and that's actually it for the simple introduction, what you could do with the REST library. So the next step is, of course, a little bit more complex. We are going to let me give a name here, simple REST, whatever. And we're going to dive into Facebook. Facebook offers a REST API as well, and we're going to use that one. All right, this is an application I already prepared for accessing Facebook. But before we dive into Facebook, there is one little gem I would like to show you, which is the REST Debugger. The REST Debugger is a tool where you can actually play around with REST APIs. It's kind of hidden in the Embarcadero REST Studio 12 bin directory. It's the just REST debugger. They forgot to give it an icon, looks like, and this is it. So what do you do with it? You can actually go and put in URLs here, like the one we used previously. Developer experts.net. We got HD mobile API, and we used mandators. So let's see, mandators. Send request. Okay, we see what we got in the response. It's 200. Okay, we got like 1,823 bytes of data returned. We got some timing results here. Total processing was 250 milliseconds. Just let's see what happens if we request once more. And you can see it's, well, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. So you can actually use that to time your own server if you like. Okay, headers that have been returned, some information in here. It's obviously something produced with or served by Microsoft's IIS 7.0. It seems to be an ASP.NET application. It's actually a web API application. We got a body. It says content is valid JSON, which is the reason that you see it being formatted here. So this is actually what we have used in the previous demo here. So and of course you can see tabular data. So it's perfect to play around. You can even go ahead here and for example put in parameters. In this case we're going to use URL parameters. Let's say mandator's ID. Of course, I could put in /1 here and say send request, and in this case we just get one single mandator back, which is the one with ID 1. But to try out what happens with parameters, we can put in URL segments, which look like this, and go to the parameters section here and add a new URL segment, name it ID, give it a value of 1, apply it, and actually you see we can put in the resource here so that we have here just the base URL. Go here and put in mandators. Make this ID, and it should still bring the same result. And to actually prove that it's doing something, we're going to issue or ask for mandator ID 2, and you send request, and you see we got a new different response here. So this is perfect for playing around with with the timings, with the body and everything. Okay, this is a little gem which is quite nice. And one thing to mention here, you can actually put in a proxy server like Fiddler, which is very convenient if you want to see how the server and the client, in this case the REST debugger, are actually communicating with each other. So this is something very useful. Okay, let's go back to Facebook. This is already something where you can see, okay, we need a couple of more components here. But before we start off, let's go back to the slides and go to the Facebook slide. To get started with app development for Facebook, you have to go to developersfacebook.com apps. So this is where we're going now. So this is developersfacebook.com apps, and when you go first here, you have to register yourself as a developer. I'm already registered, so this is why I already see the create new app button here. Okay, let's create a new app. We just call that one Dev Test, for example, and I have to supply a category which is going to be utilities. So some sort of a security check, 545299, and continue. So this is preparing some stuff in the background, and the actual thing we are waiting for is this. This is what you need in the very beginning. You need an app ID and an app secret. These app IDs and secrets are used to identify your application against Facebook. And we need that to authenticate ourselves, our application against Facebook. So let's dive into it. So we do have a REST client, we have a request, and we have a response. Nothing very new here. But in the simple example, we didn't supply any authentication mechanisms or any credentials, which we need to do in Facebook, which is why we have an OAuth2 authenticator, which is of course part of the REST library component set here. So there is an OAuth2 and OAuth1, and there are a couple of even different authenticators like basic authentication and simple authentication. We're using OAuth2 for Facebook, and this component has a convenient context menu configure. So here you put in all this complicated stuff which makes up for OAuth2. I put all those endpoints, how we call them, into the slides here, so you can read them here as well. So let's see what we need to do. So we have an authentication endpoint, a token endpoint, and a redirection endpoint, which is something they want, and we have to put in the client ID. Those actually changed because I created a new application here, so we have to go back to that page, copy and paste the app ID. So this is client or app ID. There is no standard how all those providers or APIs call that IDs. It's app or client, whatever. So go back and copy and paste the app secret. This is this. And well, you see actually an access token here, which already has a value, which comes from my previous test when I pre-built that application. But this is actually not existing anymore because I deleted the original application from Facebook. So we have to actually authenticate our application now, which means click on Authorize. This actually leads to a web browser window where you log in. Of course, now our application authenticates against the account you supply. So this would be an application which works for you, for your account. I will show you later in the Dropbox demo what you can do in code to actually have your users put in this credentials. So let's do that for a moment from the IDE and save it with the whole application. But remember, this is not meant to be how you would distribute your application, because what we are doing now is giving everybody access to your own account, which is my account in this case here. So let's go ahead and do this. And log in. Oops, that was the wrong password. All right, this one it is. Okay, this may take a second or two. Let's see if we got already something. Let's see if we can already execute a request. No. Sometimes it needs 2 tries, so maybe just put that one away. And here we go. So we got a access token and should be ready to go now. So apply that one and execute the request, and we should see a 200, and which we see here. So what we see here is now something that we have to look into. So we have a request here, and that request actually asks for some weird ID fields, ID names, and name and post. So what is this actually? So let's step back for a minute and look into the Graph API. The Graph API is what we are talking to in Facebook. And the Facebook Graph API actually has an explorer where you can see what functionality is available. So let's go into that one. So when you look into the documentation as well, then you will see quite a few methods and API calls you can actually issue. And one of those API calls is actually this one here. So obviously this one is returning my own ID. We can actually say even here in that case, for example, me, because it recognizes that it's actually myself, and it returns the name. And you can now see what we got here. Birthday, for example, should have something, so you see my birthday here. And of course, you can put in here your friends, for example. Let's try this. Marco Cantu, that should return something. And you see Marco has a birthday, but no birth year, so he is just of 9/8. And you see his name. And of course, you can try to figure out what else. Okay, about doesn't exist. Let's see if we find anything like gender. So yeah, he's a male, obviously. So this is now something you have to figure out in the documentation what you are actually looking for. The Explorer is very great to figure out what the actual request should look like, and that's what we did here in that sample application. The sample application uses ID name posts. Okay, let's see what posts actually returns. You can see here inside that memo that there is already quite some stuff in there and waits to be parsed, which could be done with a client data set and dive into that. I will leave that for the interested reader to do that. Because we are running out of time, we are actually going to look into Dropbox now. Dropbox is also giving us API access, and I prepared a demo, or actually Daniel Wolf did it for me. He figured out all the dirty stuff here. And well, we see a couple of components here already again. And what I will show you is actually getting access to your Dropbox account and list the files and download a file. So we got a REST client again, and again in the PowerPoint slides, you will find the entry points where you can find all the documentation and how to register yourself as a developer with Dropbox and how to add your own application here. Very similar to Facebook. The difference is Dropbox is, in my opinion, much better documented. Okay, so REST client. The REST client uses a base URL. We actually have account info, list files, and download file. So the list files is a request that goes to metadata Dropbox, okay, and connects to REST client 1. So this is going to connect to this base URL. And let's go to the authenticator. The authenticator is very similar. It does have all those endpoints. We already have a client ID, a client secret, which you can obtain from those pages I've shown you on the PowerPoint slides. And I already generated an access token here. So this access token is now compiled into my application, which means this access token is directly connected to my very own Dropbox account. So be careful. Don't supply that with your application because it gives everybody access to your Dropbox account. This access token expires after a while, but it might be available for, or actually valid for quite some time. So be aware, this is actually secure information here. I will show you in a minute how to make that work for your individual users. So we just use that and see what we do here. So we have list files. So this just executes the list file request, sorry. And just let's do that from here, and it's all okay. We can just have a quick look at the response, which should be here. And you see that there is already some sort, well, it's a large response here. There is something with files in here. So to make it more easy readable, we actually connected the response to a dataset adapter, have a FireDuck, a mem table, and a data source again. And you see my very own Dropbox content here. So, okay, let's run the application and list the files. This would work just without any authorization or authentication because it's built into or compiled into the application already. So let's see what we get here. And we have a file here, which is obviously an image. And I have a download file component, a context menu, which asks me to save it somewhere. I am going to save it to the desktop. Let's go back to the desktop, and what we see here is the file I just downloaded. No fake, it's just been downloaded from that simple client here. And let me show you how we actually downloaded the actual file. You see we have a second REST client. The reason is that the files are served from a different URL or from a different base URL. So you see API content Dropbox.com one, which is a little bit different from the standard API call. This is all documented, so you can find that. And we connect a different request here, which means files, Dropbox, and path. The path is a parameter, and the parameters are defined here. And here we could actually supply, if we leave it empty, we are on the root directory. And if we supply a directory name such as books here, we would dive into the books directory. So this is why we have that one here. And so list files just executes that one, which is easy. And the download button is here and does just simple stuff. One important thing is to reset the fallback charset encoding, because binary files on Dropbox do not have any charset encoding here. This is something you should just know. Just do it with binary files. We set, or actually, we take the currently chosen file name from the grid, from the mem table, and set that as a parameter of the request where we actually want to download the file from. So this is the path, the file name. And then I'm just removing the leading slash here. You might have seen that one, and prompt for file name, which is just a standard dialog here. And what we do is create a stream and take the stream and take the raw bytes from the response. The response has been filled with raw bytes after the execute, because this response too is connected to that request download file here. So, and supply the content length, which is fine, and this is it. So this actually puts in the stream what we downloaded from Dropbox here. So this is actually pretty easy, and I guess it leaves quite some room for experimentation here. So the last thing in this session I want to show you is the actual authentication here, because we still have a problem. It's all coming from my very own Dropbox account here. So to actually authorize your users, you have to put in a button or some method where your users can put in their passwords. And you see from it within the application, I'm just starting the same browser window here, and of course I'm going to put in, well, my very own account again, because I just have that one. But here your users would put in their credentials, of course. Talking and typing passwords is complicated. Okay, so log on. Almost. And let's try that. Okay, it asks for authentication that Delphi Explorer would like to access all my files. Okay, I want to do that. And now I have, of course, the same file list again, but trust me, this would actually put in an access token specifically for the user that just logs in. So how to do that? Well, I did copy some stuff from, let me see where it is. Here we go. I did copy some stuff from the sources of the REST library. So there is a form, OAuth web form, and that one comes from REST Authenticator OAuth webform.win. So this is where this form comes from. So we are just creating that form that presents the actual login form for Dropbox in this case, and it knows where to go just by supplying show model with URL, by supplying the authorization request URI from the OAuth 2 authenticator, which is the component that lies here and where we have all those URLs configured. And this is basically the endpoint it's going to ask for. So this is the magic how to bring up that window, and you have to supply an on after redirect event handler, and that one is a little bit dirty. I copied that as well from the sources. Just trust me, it works by extracting the actual access token from the response from Dropbox in that browser window. Just take it as it is. I hope that Embarcadero will provide some more elegant way to process the response of that window. So just take it that way, just copy it from this source, and you will be good to go. Okay, one very last thing I would like to show is something I've forgotten actually, which is the URL for SSL. It's always for people that are new to SSL or HTTPS in Delphi, that they are actually presented with an error message that there is a missing DLL in the application and that it cannot open HTTPS URLs. Facebook is all HTTPS, so we need that those two DLLs. It's the libEA 32 DLL and the SSLEA 32 DLL, and that one can be obtained from the Fullgun server, which is a mirror of Indy's SSL stuff. And you would just go here, which is the most current one, OpenSSL, just download that one. You can trust this Fullgun server. He is alive like, I don't know, like 10 or 15 years. I have no clue how long that guy lives, or this FTP server lives actually. And for those who are interested to do the same thing in mobile clients, he already has the static libraries for the iPhone or for Android you would need here. Okay, so just download that and copy that into your application folder, and you're basically good to go. So this is basically my session for today. We learned how to access Facebook and Dropbox, and how to use authentication, OAuth 2 authentication, to basically get access to those two providers. Hope you enjoyed the session, and thank you very much.
We had a couple of questions. There were a couple of questions about the Delphi version. It's all, of course, in XE5. It's not in XE4 or earlier version, so you need XE5. And the demos have been asked for. Yes, they will be available for download. I'm not exactly sure if Embarcadero is going to provide the demos with the recordings, or if not, I will of course put them onto my blog. The blog is www.monien.net. There is one question about big data sets. Big data sets is something you shouldn't really send with one response. You never know where your clients are actually. If your client is using a mobile device and is on edge, or even worse, on slower speeds, your application will not really be usable. So try to use a paging approach, like send a maximum of 10 or 20 or whatever fits records at a time, and make your application work in a way that your application knows, okay, I got 10 records and there are like 1,000 more, and if the user really needs more, just provide some sort of paging here. Let me see what kind of questions we still have.
Yeah, I put your blog URL there. I think best is for you to upload any document, slides, or whatever. We'll keep the replay videos linked off the Code Rage page.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure, I will do that. I think
there were two other ones here. Something about authorization form is very big, but that's just your example form, right?
Well, the form we've seen for the authorization is actually built into the library. The point is the content that you see in that form is presented by Facebook, by Dropbox, or whatever you use, and they put fancy graphic stuff into it. So you really have to present it. There is no way to just show the actual credential edits. So there is HTML around it. You cannot really scratch it off. So you have to present something that allows your users to really see that page. And if Facebook decides to put the login edits way down the page, well, you have to do something to display it. There is no way to customize that.
There's not you can't tell Facebook give you like the mobile version of that page?
Yeah, that will be an option probably, but that would require the user agent to be set, and I'm not exactly sure out of my head if that will be possible right now. But it's certainly something that should be looked into, yes. Oh yeah.
Are the components handling timeouts automatically and the try and request again, or is this up to the user?
Request again is up to the user, so there is a timeout. You can actually set a timeout on the REST client. I think the default is 30 seconds because sometimes services are slow, but you can configure that, yes.
Can I use this to send security video files to Dropbox?
Yes, sure. What we have seen is a download mechanism, and they of course have an upload mechanism as well. So yeah, you can send video files from your Delphi application to Dropbox. There shouldn't be any problem, I think.
Okay. Make sure they're on Wi-Fi and not Edge, for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, are the components counting the successful requests automatically that would be useful for services with API limits?
Right now, no, they don't. It's an interesting idea. We should communicate that. Yes, I would say it's interesting, and we should count for them to stay into those API limits you might have on your account. Yes, interesting thing.
That's a good idea. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have. And obviously, we kind of mentioned this, but your demos were on the desktop, but this also works on mobile and with C++ Builder and with Delphi Pro, and it works everywhere.
Yes, right. It's FireMonkey and VCL. It's just that it's faster to compile and debug with Windows, and when we do our applications, we often have a mobile application for Android and iOS, and just to test the REST stuff, we have also a Win32 app, and just run it through that. It's just faster because the deployment cycle is shorter to Win32.
And Andreas has a question here about, is there any counting of successful requests?
We just talked about that.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
He said that's a good idea.
Okay. So you do it yourself?
Yeah, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future we'll see if we can see what happens.
I was answering another question about GoToWebinar compliance. Sorry.
So what can you talk about maybe what other services you've used the REST clients to talk to?
We've been using Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, we have used Parse, we have a question to use Kinway, which is similar to Parse.
Yeah, Parse and Kinway are both background as a service, backends as a service.
Yes, right. And of course we used our own API, which is Harley Mobile. It's an application on the iPhone, currently just on the German market. So yeah, we tried a couple of, or actually a few of different, actually we even used Google Docs. There is a demo, I think, if I remember correctly, in XE5 that shows Google Docs. So you can access that as well. And there is a fancy device, the Twine device. Twine is actually a Kickstarter project, and it's like a it's a temperature sensor and motion sensor, and we use that to request the current temperature of our office. So yeah, all different kinds of REST APIs we used.
Well, actually, I had used it, posted to put it to Microsoft's OData Northwind database they have set up for through OData, and set the root node, and boom, all of a sudden it showed up in there. So that was really cool to see it work with that. Yeah. Marco mentioned that some people are using it actually to build a full-blown OData services.
Okay, cool. Well, the problem with OData is that that is not strictly a REST API. They are using some techniques from the RSS world, which makes it a little bit more complicated, I guess, to build a full-blown OData provider.
Yeah. Yep. But well, from what I saw, pointing it to an OData endpoint, if you set the root node correctly, it will display that in your data set, in your grid. But yeah, there are, going beyond there is where you get creative. Excellent. Any more questions coming in here? Looks like we're good.
That's it.
So thank you very much, Olaf.
Olaf, thank you, and can't wait till you get out here in Scotts Valley. It'd be great to see you, since I didn't see you in Leipzig. You know.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks. Take care.